Hello, welcome to Movie Monday. This is something I'm doing because we are all under a lockdown order again until May 30th. And I just thought I'd upload some content and address some things that I like to talk about. So, one of the things I like to talk about is movies about the Bible. And I particularly enjoy movies about the Bible where they are made by non Christians. Because it's always interesting to see how people handle the different nuances of the Bible. And really, there is a lot of poetic license that you can take when it comes to the biblical text, because oftentimes we don't have a lot of information. Uh, one of the counterexamples is Easter, where we have lots of information about the last week of Jesus' life. But contrast that to the story of Noah or the Exodus, and there is actually very little information that the text provides us about these men and what they went through, and so there's a lot of poetic license that can be taken there. And so I wanted to talk about one of the movies that I really enjoyed watching. I don't think it's a good take on the book of Exodus, but it is Exodus, Gods, and Kings. So I'm going to show some clips from that movie, things I think it does pretty well, actually, in illustrating, and things it doesn't. So we're going to start with Moses, or Batman, Christian Bale. He is going to go and talk to God. Now, the entire premise of Exodus, Gods, and Kings is that you have God, Yahweh, who is portrayed as a young child. And this is probably because the director, I don't know this for sure, because I haven't seen anything about it, but my guess is the director is taking the approach that the Old Testament God is very immature, and the New Testament Reformed God is much different, where as Christians we believe it's the same God who's dealing with us under Old Covenants and New Covenants. But at least for this movie, God is portrayed as a very young child, and Moses takes on almost a mentorship role, and this young child is in conflict with the Pharaoh of Egypt. So it is this contest between God and the guy who claims he's a god and Pharaoh. And so the interesting thing about this movie is that Pharaoh actually kind of recognizes that he's a fraud, that he doesn't, that he's not God. But let's go ahead and we will watch a little bit of Exodus, Gods, and Kings together.
Where have you been?
Watching you fail.
Wars of attrition take time.
At this rate, it'll take years. A generation.
I am prepared to fight for that long.
I'm not.
I thought we were making progress. Now you're impatient. After 400 years of slavery.
Am I the only one sitting here who's done nothing about this until now?
I do know a few things about military action. Still, if you're not going to listen to me, then why did you take me away from my family?
I didn't. You did.
You don't need me.
Maybe not.
So what do I do? Nothing.
For now, you can watch.
So here's a part of the movie I really like, is how they handle the plagues. This is going to get a little bit graphic, by the way. I might actually mute the video here for a moment, because you do have these giant crocodiles who are going to eat everybody. So... Alright, so as we're listening to this in the background, I'll pull this back a little bit. It is a very interesting take on the plagues and how they would have affected Egypt. One of the things I really like about Exodus, Gods, and Kings is how it portrays the plagues. I think it does a really good job. It kind of shows us the visceralness and the reaction that would have been taking place in Egypt as this was going on, and how this would have been affecting people. And I just really appreciate the way they handled this in the movie. It's very graphic, but it would have been, it would have been much worse for people who were living through it. And obviously, once the blood fills the water, all these fish die, and there's a natural progression that this movie does very well, where I'm going to skip ahead here just a little bit. Oh, a little bit more. The dead fish lead to these flies. The flies lead to, and not only that, but the crops get withered because there's no way to irrigate them. It kind of shows the natural progression of how all this would happen, and who knows how the frogs survived all this bloody water. But now we have these frogs coming in, and it's just an interesting sight. The stuff that we can do with computer animation and things like that now to really bring to life what the Egyptians must have been going through, especially with a big budget movie like this, is really cool. And it's one of the things this movie did really well. And while I don't really like the way they portrayed God in this movie, and I really disagree with how Moses is portrayed by Christian Bale. He's a freedom fighter. There's a lot of different themes and tones going on, but they do some things very well in this movie. So, death leading to gnats, leading to death of livestock, and all of that stuff. Now, as I was thinking about this, other screen. As I was thinking about this, one of the things that struck me that as I saw this movie in the movie theater is I really did like this natural progression of how the water turning to blood led to this, led to this, led to this, led to this. Because oftentimes that's how God works in the natural world. He does something that triggers another thing, and it's not necessarily, that God is intervening in a supernatural way, although he certainly did in this case. God has the foresight to know how these things are going to impact and affect people. And not only that, it's the timing of some of these events that's miraculous as well. So the parting of the Red Sea, a lot of people try to explain that away as a scientific event, which there have been times that, when the Israelites crossed the Jordan, that could have happened with an earthquake. And really the miraculous thing there is the timing. But here, you see all these frogs on the screen, you see all these gnats and flies and other things, and you just get a sense for the supernatural aspect of it. So it's not only, God is using the natural world in a natural way with natural consequences, but this movie also kind of amps up that God is amplifying these things as well. And I really do like this portrayal of the plagues in Exodus, Gods and Kings, even if I disagree with how it handles other things. Let's see. Now, this is not something that is exclusive to Exodus, Gods and Kings. In fact, I didn't realize this, but during Easter, they play the Ten Commandments movie on ABC, I think. And my wife used to watch it every year growing up as a kid as part of their Easter traditions. And we bought it digitally last Christmas, actually. And so we were watching through this together this past Easter as part of our family Easter tradition that we're building. And it struck me that as we were watching the Ten Commandments, I went back to this Exodus movie, Gods and Kings, because they don't actually show the plagues in the Ten Commandments. I don't think they had the budget for it, but they do have this really great line by Pharaoh. And I'm kind of scrubbing through my timeline trying to find it here. Okay. No. Oh, wait. There we go. Okay.
These things were ordered by.
So I do think that Exodus, Gods, and Kings actually took a lot of cues from the Ten Commandments movie, which is not a bad thing. Obviously, the Ten Commandments is one of those great cinematic movies that holds up pretty well over time. You know, it's interesting to think back how old this movie is with Charlton Heston and what they were able to do with the different special effects. So let's go ahead and watch if I can get it pulled up. Well, 2 hours, 27 minutes. I'll refresh and see if I can get that back. Sorry, a lot of this is unscripted, so this will be the last thing that I do, and then we'll call Movie Monday the end here in just a moment.
These things were ordered by themselves.
Okay, back just a little bit. There we go.
Blood flows from the gods.
See how it spreads. It is blood.
That you may know the power of the Lord. For 7 days Egypt will thirst.
7 days without water will
Fill every jug and jar.
Pestilence will be everywhere.
For it's 7 times 7 days. No magician's trick will set your people free. Sacred water, make pure the flood from which you came.
So this is actually something that they reference back to in Exodus, Gods and Kings, where they're unable to purify the water by way of the
God
gods.
smote the land with all manner of plagues, but still Pharaoh's heart was hardened.
Come on, white balance. There we go.
Great one, you hear the cry of Egypt.
They would cry louder if they had to make the bricks. Send them away.
The people have been plagued by thirst. They've been plagued by frogs, by lice, by flies, by sickness, by boils. They can endure no more.
And here's a
Why
pretty
do you
good
bring
line
this
coming
worker
up.
of evil before me?
The people desert the temples. They turn from the gods.
What gods? You prophets and priests made the gods that you may prey upon the fears of men. When the Nile ran red, I too was afraid. Until word came of a mountain beyond the cataracts, which spewed red mud and poisoned the water. Was it the staff I gave you that caused all this? Was it the wonder of your God that fish should die and frogs should leave the waters? Was it a miracle that flies and lice should bloat upon their carrion and spread disease in both man and beast? These things were ordered by themselves, not by any god. Now go.
So that's actually a really good line, and it's really what I think inspired the Exodus movie, where they took this idea of these things kind of naturally occurring, these things naturally occurring one following the other, and showing and demonstrating just how much one plague could lead into another. It's a great line in the Ten Commandments movie, but it's a great visual in Exodus, Gods and Kings. So if you need something to rent during quarantine and you're interested in how the book of Exodus, or at least the Ten Commandments story, has been adapted over the years, either Ten Commandments, Exodus, Gods and Kings, Prince of Egypt is another great one that I might talk about in a week or two, or if there's time. But just wanted to share that with you, give you something to think about while we are all under lockdown. Hope you're having a great week, or hope you're going to have a great week, and I'll see you later.